We're turning this sunken boat into a floating home, but we just found a major issue. So far, we've stripped down this old sunken boat to a blank slate, scrapped the old rotted deck, and added 2 more pontoons that we salvaged from another boat to increase the buoyancy. Next came a new floor before building these wall sections that we lifted up and secured to the boat. Most recently, we covered the outside with these green water-resistant panels and began building more framing outside to extend the rooftop deck. Of course, all of these building materials add a lot of weight to the boat, and we noticed the pontoons are beginning to get smushed. It became very obvious to us that the pontoons had too much weight on them when we noticed how much they flex when pushing up and down on the boat. We ran into another major concern when we pulled the trailer off of these big red jack stands, and we discovered the trailer itself was flexing like a noodle under all of this weight. To solve this problem, we need to figure out a way to remove pressure off the pontoons, and we need to figure out a way to strengthen the trailer so that it doesn't bend like a noodle. On the bright side, we have a bunch of good, usable steel sitting right behind me that we can salvage from the original pontoon trailer. First, I crawled underneath the boat with a laser, allowing me to shoot a straight line all the way from the front to the back. With a rough plan in mind, we chopped up the old trailer and started prepping it to be welded into a new creation. A couple special tools came into play next. A surprisingly inexpensive drill press, and this contraption I'm connecting to the drill press called a pipe notcher. It's called this because, well, it notches pipes. By cutting a curved piece out of the end of one pipe, it mates up perfectly with another pipe before getting welded together. After taking a quick lunch break and notching several more pipes, I had laid out our first truss to reinforce the trailer. But I noticed the longest section was slightly curved, and we need it to be straight. So I brought over this matching section, laid it alongside the curved one, and clamped them together to make it as straight as possible. I could then weld all of these short pipes to the long section, making it all one unit. Big shout out to my middle school teacher, Mr. McNall, for teaching me how to weld steel. With this lightly tacked together, James and I could test fit it underneath the boat.
It's another round. You want to get it one more?
Yeah.
There you go.
It was quite the challenge to get this thing in position with the boat on top of the trailer, but we successfully test fitted it while noting a few adjustments we needed to make. After making those adjustments and getting this thing fully welded up, it was time to crawl back under the boat and get this thing in position.
You're in a terrible spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, how about you get all the way to the other side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. That was really fun. With these contraptions under both sides of the boat, it was time to do some welding. And because we don't have electricity out here, this portable generator will be our power source. First things first, I want to get all these pipes welded to the trailer. Most of the pipes lined up as planned, but a few didn't. So I said, strap that sucker down, which coincidentally is the same thing the employees at Chuck E. Cheese say when I show up. Once all of these pipes were welded to the trailer, we could move on to adding some additional bracing. Huge shout out to my brother Teddy for hooking us up with this nice heavy-duty square tubing. I think it's gonna do a great job. After adding these supports to the front of the trailer, I created some similar braces for the back of the trailer. The next day, I took these bed frames that were getting thrown out, chopped them up, and welded them in for even more support. Finally, after days crammed under the boat and slightly more delusional than usual, I was done welding. Man, I hope this works. I'm banking on some knowledge from high school when we had to build a bridge out of plastic straws. That's my whole thinking behind the metal supports running the length of the trailer. Before adding the supports, the trailer was just a straight piece of metal that was pretty easy to bend. So, much like a bridge, which isn't just a straight piece of metal, I'm hoping these supports will stiffen up the trailer. Let's pull the jacks out from underneath this thing and see if that's the case. go. Oh, it's so f***ing stiff, dude.
That's what she said.
It's nice. Hell yeah. The trailer is super solid now, but we've still got to get the weight and pressure off of the pontoons. So, in super sketchy fashion, we're using 2 floor jacks and a couple 2x4s to lift one side of the houseboat off the trailer. This creates just enough space for us to slide a long wooden board between the houseboat's cross members and the metal trusses we added to the trailer. Once we have the board in position, we can lower the houseboat back down, jack up the other side, add another board over here, and lower the boat back down. Now the majority of the weight has been transferred onto the trusses and the wooden boards that we're securing with these pipe straps. With no more rain forecasted for a couple weeks, we could finally pull the tarps off and get back to work. First, we re-leveled the boat before framing a matching rear upper deck. Next, we could start hauling subfloor sheets up to the roof. We've been using this rickety ladder to get up there. Now it's time to build a proper ladder, and we've got a plan to build one out of just 4 boards. After tracing over the angle we need, I could copy that angle to make slots for each step of the ladder. I could then set the depth stop on the saw so that it only cuts a little bit into the slots we marked on this board. After making probably 100 shallow cuts, Donald could go to town with the chisel, cleaning up each of the slots. Meanwhile, James was sealing up all of these holes where we nailed the zip wall to the framing. After chiseling out slots in 2 boards, we screwed them into the passageway up to the roof. Finally, we could slide each of the steps into their slot, which was a super snug and satisfying fit. And just like that, we've got ourselves a sweet ladder to climb up to the roof. But we would then encounter another problem when it came time to install our big glass doors and windows. Turns out, somewhere along the way, I didn't make these openings wide enough for the sliding doors. Thankfully, we're foolish enough to believe we can fix it. While Donald carefully cuts the sheathing, I bring over a jack and board to take the pressure off this center stud. After cutting the nails that hold the stud in place, we can yank it right out of there and reposition it where it needs to go.
Crisis averted on that.
Yeah. But time to address another crisis, as this opening also isn't wide enough. Because of how the header is sandwiched in there and can't be removed, our only option was to pull out this structural stud and shave it down to be a little bit skinnier. She should still do the job though. Wait a second, that isn't the usual delivery truck. That's a delivery tractor. In Salvage to Scenic style, James and I tracked down some budget-friendly sliding doors that were reclaimed from a construction job. They do have some minor damage, but nothing we can't work with. Before we can install the door, we've got to apply this flashing tape to the sill just in case any bit of water gets behind the door. Technically, we were supposed to apply this around the entire door frame, but we were too excited. Thankfully though, she fit right in there. After carefully hammering in lots of nails, we could do the final waterproofing of the door. This layer of tape that we're applying all the way around the outside of the door is a lot more important when it comes to keeping water out. As I may have mentioned, we're installing 2 of these sliding doors, only we're flipping the second one so that it opens opposite the other door. Once we got that installed, it was time to move on to the kitchen window. This time, we remembered to apply flashing tape all the way around the window frame. For the kitchen and bathroom window, we selected awning-style windows that open like this. Should be a pretty sweet view from the kitchen sink. This little bathroom window is actually the only window we bought brand new. When it came to the back entry, we were able to salvage this sweet full glass door that came out of an office building. We plan to use these sliding doors from the side of the road for our remaining windows, but they're super heavy. Something we should have been a bit more detailed with at the beginning of this project was totaling the weight that we're adding to the boat. And it turns out maybe only halfway through building this thing, we're already at nearly 6,000 pounds. We're gonna need to rethink our plan if we ever want a chance of this thing floating. Or else she's probably headed somewhere most boats don't want to go. But at this point, we're committed to this design and its flaws, including this window opening, which also turned out to be the wrong size. But compared to the sliding door, this window opening was an easy fix. The picture window we're installing actually isn't a window at all. It used to be a sliding door. So we had to create this casing to prevent the window from falling through the opening into the room.
Watch fingers.
Yep. These screws should do a good job of preventing the window from falling outwards, but we want to be sure it won't. So after taping up around the window to waterproof it, we added these white trim boards, which improve the look and help hold the window in place. Man, that looks sweet. And then when we went to clean up our last window, the big glass pane fell right out of its plastic frame. So we scraped off the old silicone and re-glued the glass into its frame. 3,
I'm good.
2, 1, go. Perfect. After allowing this to dry for a couple days, we could finally install our last window. Just kidding. There ended up being a problem with the fitment of this window too. So after pulling it out, sanding it down a bit, trying to put it back in, pulling it back out, sanding it down some more, and test fitting it a third time, it finally fit in there.
You can hear the difference. It's really different.
Yeah, it's really.
The audio will pick it up on that.
Yeah, it's really quiet in here
It's
now.
not cold in here either. No, it's nice and cozy. It'll probably heat up once the sun hits it. Quite pleasant. Got a concealed box. Pretty much. I mean, you got like a couple little things you just gotta shim out. This is good, that's good. So it's really just this and this.
Man, does it feel good to be back on track, making some good progress on this thing. And what an awesome spot to take a little lunch break. We've made a lot of progress, including putting on this subfloor for the roof. And now we've got not one, but 2 nice big sliding doors. And just today, James and I taught ourselves the process of installing cedar shingle siding. But after completing 2 big rows on the largest wall of the houseboat, we realized we didn't do a very good job of teaching ourselves. Take note of this tan-colored cloth with these little blue dots on it. This is called hydro gap. Its purpose is to make a little bit of an air gap behind the shingles to allow water to run down and out without getting trapped behind there. If you look at the second row of shingles here and the gap that's left to allow them to expand when they absorb moisture, you'll notice all you see in this gap here is another wooden shingle. But on the first row, you can see that tan material with the blue dots in between these gaps. And that's because we forgot to double up on the first row of shingles, which, as you can see, installing a double layer of shingles on the first row would have hidden that tan material with the blue dots, and it would have made this a little bit more weatherproof. So we're gonna rip off all of these shingles tomorrow morning and start fresh. Thankfully, it turned out we only needed to remove the second row of shingles to get in there and double up the first row. We're using this long board as a guide to line up the shingles evenly, and after completing each row, we can pull the board off, move it up a few inches, and tack it in place to install the next row of shingles. There's a few different ways to shingle corners. We decided to weave them for a little bit more character. As I made my way around this corner to the other side of the houseboat, I arrived at this skinny gap below the sliding door. It would kind of be wasteful to cut full brand new shingles for this area. But then I remembered the row that we ripped off because of our mistake earlier, so I hopped in the dumpster and pulled them out. We just need to cut a tiny sliver off the bottom of these and we'll be in business. The best part was, after filling in this annoying little area under the door, trying not to smash the door with the hammer, I remembered I have to double up this first row. I will say though, fitting these obscure little pieces is pretty satisfying. While I was moving at a snail's pace, Donald and James were chugging along on the other wall. Over the next couple days, I wrapped up the other side and we finally hammered in the last row of shingles.
And with the installation of this last puzzle piece and well over 2,000 nails later, we're finally done shingling. And now it's finally time for us to slap our big old rubber roof on so we don't have to keep covering this thing up every time it rains. But first, to prevent dry rot and mold and moisture buildup in the walls, we have to install a bunch of vents along the top of the wall here to allow the walls and the ceiling to breathe.
First, we used a hole saw to cut through the shingles and gain access to the wall itself before using this demolition bit to drill through the wall. The only problem was this drill wasn't really up to the task. So we rented this bad boy, which certainly had plenty of power. Just to be safe, we applied some adhesive to each vent before pressing it in with a socket. The goal here was to vent each of the wall and ceiling cavities, but this might have been too much ventilation. We don't really know, so let us know down in the comments while we can still fix it. With probably way too much venting complete, we could reinstall the ladder and trim down these two boards that are going to help with the next step. That next step is adding fascia boards to the roof, which we're really excited for. We're using these PVC trim boards that are already white, but they're super flexy, which makes them a little bit difficult to maneuver. Each piece gets secured with a bunch of screws as we make our way around the houseboat. Being in New England, the day after we're out here working in t-shirts, it got real cold. And this engine has not been winterized to protect it from the cold. So I pulled the scrapyard truck over, popped the hood, and connected the boat engine to the scrapyard truck battery, as we don't have a battery on the boat right now. This would allow us to tilt the engine down, which we thought would make it a lot easier to remove.
Oh.
Despite weighing less than 200 pounds, this thing was wedged in here pretty damn good. So we had to bring in the big guns.
Whoa, there we go.
On one side, it's not 70.
With the engine safely stowed away for the winter, we put together a game plan for tomorrow to install our rubber roof. Until this happened.
It's about 7:30 on a Tuesday morning. Today and tomorrow, Wednesday, were supposed to be our two big roofing days because we've been waiting for the weather to improve after lots of rain and freezing temperatures. Today and tomorrow are supposed to be beautiful. But I just woke up and it looks like some rain came through, and there's more rain forecasted in the next 20-30 minutes. Really don't want to have to let the roof dry out for another week and wait for another slot of warm weather to do this thing. So time to head over there and cover the thing up so hopefully it doesn't get wet. Got some good news and bad news. The bad news is, right as I climbed up the ladder here to the upper roof, to cover up this uncovered subfloor, I noticed that this was a little bit damp, just a tad. The good news is the rain really just started coming down, and as you can hear there, the tarp is doing its job of preventing water from getting on the subfloor here. So glad I was able to just barely catch this and prevent any more moisture from getting up on the roof there and messing with our roofing. Over here.
It's not that damp, but I can tell there's some moisture in that.
To figure out when this would all be dry enough to install our rubber roof, we grabbed this moisture meter.
All right, just calibrated. And 15. The PT is 15 also. That over here. 14. Why don't we compare that to a piece of theoretically dry wood, like ceiling joist? Oh, dude, it's the same. So theoretically, that's not even, or we can measure the underside of the OSB. It's in the same ballpark. It's reading the same amount on the bottom, which should be dry. So
we took the opportunity to sand down any uneven or rough areas on the roof before giving it a solid week to dry, just to be safe. Finally, we could haul our big roll of rubber up to the roof and lay it out front to back. After trimming the excess from the edges and cutting a hole so we can actually get back down the ladder, these guys showed up.
I swear I could catch one of those by hand.
I'm not so sure about that, but something we were sure of was that this toxic bucket of goop was gnarly. In order to get this done right, we've got to peel back half the rubber sheet and apply that goop to both the wooden subfloor and the underside of the rubber sheet. Believe me when I tell you, this created a human-sized mousetrap. Despite letting the roof dry and waiting for a warm day to do this, it also ended up being a very windy day. This made for a fun time, especially when the wind flipped the rubber over onto itself. If you've ever gotten a piece of tape stuck together, imagine that, but a million times worse. In the midst of trying to save this piece of rubber, the drone wished us luck and told us it was taking its lunch break. Somehow, we did get the rubber unstuck from itself and avoided spending $1,000 on a new sheet. But the fun wasn't over yet, as we still had to glue this side of the subfloor and underneath this side of the rubber. Thankfully, we learned from our mistakes and this side went down without any issues. After securing the edge of the rubber sheet, we could trim off the remaining excess and finish off each corner with a nail as well. Our friend the wind continued to play games when it came time to install the drip edge.
And it goes right down there, like that. Get all them good chemicals on there.
This metal drip edge and special tape around the perimeter is going to help protect the roof from wind and rain.
Today is Saturday, February 22nd. As you can probably tell from the change of seasons, it's been a minute since we've worked on the boat. The truth is, holidays, editing, weather, and some other life events have slowed the pace of this progress down, and we're a little bit behind schedule. That being said, we are super stoked with the progress we've made so far, and it's just
really nice to be able to hang out on this thing. One of the first nice days we've had in weeks. The good news is this forced pause from Mother Nature gives us some time to figure out things like how we want to finish this big rooftop deck space, how we want to finish this cozy downstairs interior space. Seriously though, I have no idea what the right answer is for how much ventilation this thing needs and how it needs to be ventilated, so if you have any ideas, let us know down in the comments. We're also trying to figure out certain legalities, such as putting an engine on the back of this thing or not putting an engine on it and just making it a raft. Apparently that makes a big difference here in Massachusetts as to whether it's considered a boat or not a boat. We still have no idea if this thing's even gonna float. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed the progress so far, and we're looking forward to sharing more with you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep making the most of it. Love you guys.